Response to King Yaqub's video, Lunar Sabbath Nuked, Part 7, Last Day of SUKKOT. Hiram Yashraal, servant of Yahuwah and of the Master Yahushua HaMashiach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad in the captivity, greetings. Brothers and sisters, this video is going to be about the last day of SUKKOT, the last day of the Festival of SUKKOT, Festival of Tabernacles. And the reason why I'm putting out this video is to show scripturally what the last day of SUKKOT is. And I say this because that King Yaqub, and there are others that believe and teach that in John chapter 7, when Yahushua HaMashiach stood up and spoke about, if any man come to me, let him drink. He that believeth on me, as the scripture has said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. Well, in the narrative, it says that it was the last day, that great day of the feast. So King Yaqub and others put that day on the 8th day convocation, which is the 22nd. And because it can be shown in John chapter 8 and John chapter 9 that the next day was the Sabbath, then what his claim is that the Sabbath fell on the 23rd and not on the 22nd. So that would put the Sabbath outside of the lunar dates of the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th, which we as lunar Sabbath keepers claim that all Sabbaths fall every month. So he believes that he has found a discrepancy, and he's not alone. There are others that believe this, but the reason why they believe this is, brothers and sisters, there is a tradition that has developed amongst those who keep the festivals of calling the 8th day convocation the last great day. When I first started keeping the festivals, this was back in 2000, 2001, and I would go to keep tabernacles, and that's what we would call it. We would call the 8th day convocation the last great day. That's how I always knew it, as the last great day. But what we're going to see, brothers and sisters, is that when we go through the scriptures, we're going to see that scripturally speaking, the last day of SUKKOT is the 7th day. Not the 8th day, but the 7th day. And the 8th day is a solemn assembly, a closing convocation. So we're going to see this in the consistent witness of Scripture. We're going to look in the Torah, we're going to look in the prophets, and we're going to look in the writings, and it's all going to say the same thing. Now, one thing that King Yaqub does that I agree with him 100%, and this is part of his teaching style, that he says that if there's anything in dispute, we go back to the Torah. We get a foundation in the Torah. And I think that's great. That I don't disagree with everything that King Yaqub teaches. And that's one thing that I agree with him wholeheartedly about, is that we have to go back and lay a foundation in the Torah, especially if there's a matter in dispute. So, let's start with the Torah, and let's start with Wayikra, or Leviticus, chapter 23. Now, the first point I want to make, as I said before, is that SUKKOT is a 7-day festival. It's not an 8-day festival. It's a 7-day festival. Now, in chapter 23, verse 34, the word reads, "Speak to the children of Yashraal, saying, on the 15th day of this 7th new moon is the festival of SUKKOT for 7 days to Yahuwah." All right, let's jump down to verse 39. It says, "On the 15th day of the 7th new moon, when you gather in the fruit of the land, celebrate the festival of Yahuwah for 7 days. On the first day is a rest, and on the 8th day a rest. And you shall take for yourselves on the first day the fruit of good trees, branches of palm trees, twigs of leafy trees, and willows of the stream, and shall rejoice before Yahuwah your Elohim for 7 days. And you shall celebrate it as a festival to Yahuwah for 7 days. In the year, a law forever in your generations, celebrate it in the 7th new moon. So, and I emphasize 7 days. I'm doing this for a reason, so that you can see that SUKKOT is a 7-day festival with a closing convocation, a closing solemn assembly on the 8th day. Now, if we go to Numbers chapter 12, and we're going to read one verse here. Numbers chapter 29, verse 12. Now, Numbers chapter 29 talks about the sacrifices that they would give on the festival days. And Numbers chapter 29, verse 12 reads on this wise. On the 15th day of the 7th new moon, you have a set-apart gathering. You do no servile work, and you shall celebrate a festival to Yahuwah 7 days. That's what it says in Numbers. All right, now let's go to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 16. In Deuteronomy chapter 16, we're going to be going through verses 13 through 15. Verse 13 reads, "Perform the festival of SUKKOT for 7 days after the ingathering from your threshing floor and from your wine press. And you shall rejoice in your festival, you and your son and your daughter and your male servant and your female servant and the Levite and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow who are within your gates. For 7 days you shall celebrate to Yahuwah your Elohim in the place which Yahuwah chooses, because Yahuwah your Elohim does barak you in all your increase and in all the work of your hands, and you shall be only rejoicing." And so here we see twice that we are to celebrate the festival of SUKKOT for 7 days. Now, let's go to the prophets, the Nevi'im. We go to Ezekiel, Yechezkel, chapter 45. I'm going to read one verse here. Now, this is talking about the future. All right, this is prophetic. Verse 25, Ezekiel 45, says, "In the 7th month, on the 15th day of the new moon, at the festival, he prepares like these 7 days, as the sin offering, as the ascending offering, as the grain offering, as the oil." So we see 7 days, even in the future, even prophetically. So in the kingdom age, 7 days. Now, I showed you in the Torah and the prophets. I want to show you in the writings now. I want to give you a couple of examples of how this played out in history. So, first place I want to go is Nehemiah. We're going to look at Nehemiah chapter 8. And we're going to look at the last verse. It's verse 18. The word reads, "And day by day, from the first day until the last day." What day was that? "He read from the book of the Torah of Elohim, and they performed the festival 7 days. And on the 8th day, there was an assembly according to the right ruling." So you see how they separated the 8th day assembly from the 7th day festival. Now, second thing I want to look at here is 2 Chronicles chapter 7. 2 Chronicles 7. Now, in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, and I'm going to read verses 8 through 10. It says, And Shlomo at that time observed the festival 7 days. And all Yashrael with him, a very great assembly from the entrance of Hamath to the Wadi of Mitzrayim. And on the 8th day they held an assembly, for they performed the dedication of the slaughter place 7 days, and the festival 7 days. And on the 23rd day of the 7th new moon, he sent the people away to their tents, rejoicing and glad of heart for the goodness that Yahuwah had done for Daud and for Shlomo and for his people, Yashrael. So, we have it in the Torah, we have it in the prophets, we have it in these two examples that the Festival of Tabernacles is a 7-day festival. So the last day of the Festival of Tabernacles is the 7th day, not the 8th day. The 8th day is a closing convocation. It is a solemn assembly, but technically it is not one of the days of the Festival of SUKKOT. I haven't found one place in the scriptures that calls the 8th day assembly the last day of the festival, or even one of the days of the festival of Sukkot. Now, if I missed something, if one of you all can find something, please message me and show me. I haven't found it. So let's go to John chapter 7. In John chapter 7, and this is the verse that's in dispute here. Verse 37 reads, And on the last day, the great day of the festival, Yahusha stood and cried out, saying, If anyone thirsts, let him come to me, and let him who believes in me drink. Verse 38, As the scripture said, out of his innermost shall flow rivers of living water. So, what day was this? It said the last day, the great day of the festival. Now, tradition says that's the 8th day, but scripture says that was the 7th day of the festival, because the festival is only 7 days. Now, if we go to John chapter 8, this is something that King Yaquab aptly pointed out concerning the next day being Shabbat. Verses 1 and 2 says, And Yahusha went to the Mount of Olives, and at dawn he came again to the set-apart place, and all the people were coming to him, and having sat down, he was teaching them. Well, why would all the people come to him and be taught by him on the next day? And we're told in chapter 9 why they were coming and being taught by him. Chapter 9, this is when the blind man was healed, and it was a big controversy because of the Pharisees, and they were mad because he did this on the Shabbat. Look at this, verse 14. It said, Now it was a Sabbath when Yahusha made the clay and opened his eyes. This is the same day that the people came to him and he taught them, and also the same day that the woman was taken in adultery. And so this was the Sabbath day. But if the last day of Sukkot, when he got up and spoke, was the 7th day, which scripturally it had to be, then that was the 21st, and the next day that we're looking at here was the 22nd. That's when the Shabbat fell, on the 22nd. It did not fall outside of the lunar dates of the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th when we look at this scripturally. So, as I said, if you can find anywhere else in the scriptures where the 8th day convocation is called the last day of the festival. Now, I'm not talking about just an interpretation of what Yahusha said. I'm talking in the scriptures. If you could show that to me, please message me and show me. Otherwise, the matter is settled. So, with that, I will say, Shalom.